Welcome back. President Donald Trump and New York Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani are set to meet at the White House today. Here's what the press secretary had to say about the meeting.
It speaks volumes that tomorrow we have a communist coming to the White House because that's who the Democrat Party elected as the mayor of the largest city in the country. I think it's very telling, but I also think it speaks to the fact that President Trump is willing to meet with anyone and talk to anyone and to try to do what's right on behalf of the American people.
President Trump confirmed the meeting via a Truth Social post. Mamdani has already sparred publicly with Trump, who has threatened to reduce federal funding to the city. The mayor-elect described the meeting as customary at a press conference yesterday. He also said his team arranged the meeting. Mamdani and Trump are both from Queens and have spent months publicly criticizing each other. Trump has repeatedly called Mamdani a communist due to his professed affinity for democratic socialism and threatened to withhold federal funds from the city and the city's government if Mamdani seeks to implement some of his campaign promises. Mamdani has attacked Trump's initiatives of his second term, including his effort to remove illegal immigrants from the United States. During an interview at the Brian Kilmeade show on Fox Radio this morning, President Trump says his meeting with Mamdani this afternoon will be open to press. Joining us to discuss that planned meeting between President Trump and New York City Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani today is Mike Gonzales, a senior fellow at the Heritage Foundation, and Mike Leon, the host of the Can We Please Talk podcast. Good to have you both on with us today. Welcome, both Mikes. So we'll start from the left with Mike Gonzales. What are you expecting from today's meeting?
Well, you never know with Trump. Sparks could fly. Depends on how Mamdani behaves. He is welcoming a communist to the White House, but he is doing so because I think he'll meet with anyone. He met with Putin, so he'll meet with Mamdani. What I hope happens is that he lets Mamdani know that New York City is not a city of international law. That doesn't exist. New York City is ruled by American law, and if he tries to do anything to ICE agents or he tries to arrest Prime Minister Netanyahu when he goes to the UN, there will be a lot of issues, a lot of problems for him. So I hope that, but politely, because he's a guest, Trump lets him know where the parameters are.
All right, Mike Leon, what are you expecting and what are you hoping for?
Yeah, well, good to see everybody on this afternoon. I do expect some sparks, similar to what Mike said. A couple clarifiers. One, Mamdani's not a communist. That's number one. As somebody whose father left a communist country, I know what they look like, and he is not one of those. But be that as it may, I expect the two of them to chat about some of the things that interlock the federal government and the funds that they give to New York City and that they give to the New York State, because there's a lot of budget that's allocated from that. The other part of it is that Mamdani and Trump are very similar. They both campaigned on a bunch of things and they both haven't accomplished either of those things. And Mamdani probably won't be able to accomplish a bunch of the things that he campaigned on, right? And the third thing is really about the affordability crisis, right? I know Mamdani has talked about that. He relies on the federal government, and New York City does, and the state of New York relies on New York City, on the federal government to tackle some of those issues with respect to housing, childcare costs, Medicaid, SNAP, and TANF benefits. So there's a lot to discuss there, and you want to play nice. So the first thing you want to do is, I agree with Mike about being on the best behavior. That includes everybody in the room, Mike. And that also includes not calling people things that they aren't, like he's not a communist, he's a democratic socialist. There's
certainly ongoing controversy over how Mamdani self-identifies and how others describe him. On this point, though, you mentioned that they share this aspect of a kind of popular appeal, but also they've both spoken a lot about the cost of living and now increasingly using that term affordability. So just in terms of a win for both sides, what that would look like, Mike Gonzales, how do you see what both sides are coming to this with and what they hope to walk away with?
I'm not sure that it can be a win for both sides. There's not a lot of Venn diagram overlap there. I actually lived under communism. I was born in communism, spent the first 12 years of my life in communism, and my father died because of communism. I've studied communism Mamdani quotes from the manifesto. He quotes from Marx's critique of Gotha, of the Gotha program. I've also written books of communism. He is very clearly a communist. Fidel Castro also denied he was a communist, by the way, before revealing to Cubans in 1961, oh, by the way, I am a communist. I don't know that there can be any overlap here. They come from very different perspectives. I think Trump has to let him know where the limitations are. And he has to, in fact, order a more robust ICE operation in New York City, because Mamdani has said he will not allow one to happen. He may also look at funding streams for New York City. There has to be an incentive from the institutions in New York have to hold, and the institutions in the United States have to hold in order to keep Mamdani from inflicting damage to the city.
Mike Leon, the potential for a win for both sides after today's meeting.
Yeah, I don't think there is a win for both sides on this. Again, not to belabor the point, I don't want to dance into the line of when socialism morphs into communism, because it sounds like Mike and my father both left the same exact country and what Fidel promised. The key difference there, though, is Fidel was running a country and there was somebody already in place that was, a borderline dictator. This is a little bit different. This is the mayor of New York City. It's a lot of steps and hurdles to accomplish communism and total government control. So in terms of the semantics of socialism and communism and where they morph, I live in Miami, Mike, so I hear these talking points all the time. But be that as it may, the win for both of them here, there isn't a win, because either of them is going to champion that one side. For example, what Caroline Levitt said yesterday, Trump will meet with anybody, right? Here comes somebody who's a quote unquote communist, and he'll meet with him, he'll meet with Putin, he'll meet with anybody. For the Mamdani side, it's the same thing. I'll go and talk to anybody because I share in this crisis of affordability that New Yorkers are going through. So I'll go talk to the president because we do rely on resources from the federal government. So we have to see how everything plays out. I mean, we thought in March when Zelensky went to the White House, that was going to be something different than what it spiraled out to be and what the subsequent fallout was from that. So we have to see, but there really isn't a win. It's a PR move, but it's a move that's been done in the past by other mayors because, like I said, they rely on a lot of the funding from the federal government.
And no doubt it's just a beginning, of course. The conversation between the two leaders will continue, hopefully, throughout the term that they're both in their roles. But coming back to this aspect of the leaning or the political alliance here within the city, Caroline Levitt said just yesterday that New York City is, quote, becoming much more left than the president ever anticipated. So, Mike Gonzales, if you could speak to that specifically about New York City and if you see a trend beyond this city within the U.S.
Oh, sure. I know. Mamdani is the future of the party. Unfortunately, as Bill Maher says, he's the future of the Republican Party. The Democratic Party has been taken over by a kind of a zombie-like entity called the Democratic Socialists of America. They don't like Democrats. They only use the Democrat Party as a means to an end. I'm sure we're going to see more of this. Why Democrats have allowed this to happen, it's beyond my understanding. Because Chuck Schumer now is going to be primaried by AOC. She's likely to win. It's going to happen throughout the country unless Mamdani messes up, in a ginormous fashion right away, in which case Republicans can point to the mess in New York City, to the danger, he's going to make affordability worse because he wants to, he might take it, if a landlord does something wrong, he might take the building away. That's just going to make New York housing even less affordable. So yes, I think this will be a test case for communism in America, and we'll see how it happens.
And we've seen some of similar policy promises winning some extra votes in recent elections, as well in Democratic strongholds. But Mike Leon, your thoughts on that as well for New York City?
Yeah, well, obviously, Steph, I was born and raised in New York. I think that one of the things that Mike said there that is true is the infighting in the Democratic Party. I can speak to that personally, just as the Democratic members of Congress that have come on the program, including one that I just had, Representative Johnny Ocheski, who has talked about the fracture of people that are to the left of him versus people that are to the right of him, and at least a little bit more in that conservative Democrat mode, like a Joe Manchin and things like that. So I think there is some infighting. I think New York was overhyped. The mayor's race was overhyped this election cycle because we didn't have that many races happening nationally. I think there is a litmus test, like Mike said, about 26 that Republicans will champion. I don't know if Bill Maher is the correct voice of the Democratic Party there, as somebody who worked at HBO for forever with Bill. But I do agree with Mike in the sentiment that Republicans will use every advantage there in terms of Mamdani slip-ups. Here's one thing I will tell you, Stefan. I just spoke to somebody recently, very good friend of mine who was up for something cabinet-wise with Mamdani that it potentially is being rescinded offer-wise. And one of the things he's told me is Mamdani is starting to realize a little bit more that the pull to go back to the center is something that will achieve him long-term success. Those are his words, not mine, via a text message. And I think Mamdani is slowly starting to reel back a little bit of the things. I know he had the conference recently with all of his cabinet members, or at least people that were going to be part of his team. And they did that outside there in New York City and talking about the future and what he wants to do for the city. But as we all know, there are some things that he can't execute on day one. He has to go through different authorities, whether it be about the free bus and transportation system. He has to go through the MTA. So there's a bunch of things that he, I think, realizes that were pie in the sky campaign promises that he's going to have to reel back in. And he's slowly starting that effort. We'll see, though, because it is going to be something that I think Republicans will use in 26 if more people like Mamdani, if AOC enters the race to go for Chuck Schumer's seat, if people like that start to enter the race on the Democratic Socialist front, that Republicans will use and say, look what's happening in New York City. These are the statistics. This is what Mamdani's done. Do you really want this person being, representing the House or Senate seat?
And I do want to look at that a little further. The 2026 midterms just around the corner as well. So just staying on that, though, Mike Leon, what role do you think relations between the president and the mayor could play in influencing the conversation and the campaigns that are closely upon us? Yeah.
Well, I mean, Steph, look back at 2020. I mean, the face potentially the Democratic Party was Andrew Cuomo. I mean, you can't find him anymore in the face of Democratic politics, as we just saw New York City reject him, not once in the primaries, but twice in the general. So, I mean, and look at the relationship that everyone was talking about back then with Trump and other Democratic governors. So how the relationship plays out, because Trump's got more years ahead of him in terms of, term limits versus Mamdani, we'll see. But in terms of the 26 midterms, and again, I just had a Democratic lawmaker on to talk about this, because how much can you really take from the 25 wins, a bunch of them in blue states, let's be honest, to 26 where the issues could change, right? Affordability could be tackled, or at least be tackled 50, 60, 70% across the country. So then there's not an issue anymore, right? We've seen solves in different conflicts, but we haven't seen really true solves in the war in Ukraine and obviously what's happening between Israel and Gaza. We haven't seen true solves, right? Is there still more federal budget being allocated to those wars and conflicts? So we don't know what the issues will be that Democrats and Republicans respectively will run on. But to Mike's point, I'm sure Republicans, especially ones at the Heritage Foundation, are making note of all the things that are happening right now with some of these folks like Abigail Spanberger and Mikey Sherrill, ones that have been elected in 25, and what's happening with respect to the candidates that are being chosen for some of these runs in 26, to try to hammer them, on attack ads and things like that, and talk about what Republicans are doing on the South front.
Certainly, there are so many moving parts here, and all of the strategy will be taking all that into account for their campaigns. But tacking off what you said about Mamdani potentially needing to come back to the center, Mike Gonzales, I'd like to get your response to that, and also how you see that relationship with the president potentially impacting the 2026 elections.
Look, I think it's a good sign that Mamdani has decided to keep Jessica Tisch as the police commissioner. She has been a very good commissioner. No one knows how long that will last. A lot also will depend on the prosecutors. If people get arrested, but then nobody gets prosecuted, then again, what is the point? Number two, we saw last night there was a huge riot outside a synagogue in New York. And what does Mamdani do? He can't help himself. He blames the people inside for discussing immigration to Israel and said that was a violation of international law. This man, who immigrated to Queens like me, except I immigrated to Queens half a century ago, he a lot more recently than me. I don't think he understands that international law does not exist, and there's nothing violative of any law to discuss immigration to a sovereign country. And for him to blame the victims again, to blame Jewish victims, shows that he will not be able to help himself. It's in his DNA. The reason he quotes Marx constantly is because his father was also a Marxist, is a Marxist. His father's still around. So I don't think there's going to be a relationship between him and President Trump. We'll see we'll find out in 2 hours, actually. The meeting at 3 p.m. Eastern time. We'll know a lot more in 4 hours what this will look like. I doubt there's going to be a love fest, but we'll see. Anything is possible.
Certainly hope whatever happens, the city of New York can thrive. And that's what we're all looking for and hoping for in this meeting and all others going forward. Thank you so much for your time today, Mike Gonzales, Mike Leon. Good to have you both on.
Thank you.
Thank you.